Kieran Marshall stared out the viewport of the transport shuttle as it approached the glittering crystalline spires of the Galactic Royal Academy. The most prestigious educational institution in the 12 galaxies hung suspended in the darkness of space, an artificial planetoid constructed from rare minerals that shimmered like a jewel against the backdrop of stars. He adjusted his uniform, tailored but noticeably different from the flowing robes worn by the other passengers. As the only human male ever admitted to the academy, he'd grown accustomed to standing out. Final approach to the Royal Academy. All exchange students prepare for docking, announced the automated system. Kieran gathered his few possessions. His acceptance had shocked the diplomatic corps back on Earth. A scholarship based purely on his unprecedented aptitude scores and his groundbreaking thesis on cross-species energy transfer mathematics. No political connections, no royal lineage, just raw talent. The shuttle docked with a gentle shudder. As the airlock cycled open, a wave of sweet, perfumed air washed over him, air calibrated for the predominantly female alien student body. A tall, willowy figure with iridescent skin awaited the new arrivals. "Welcome to the Royal Academy. I am Directress Xylia. Please follow me for orientation." As they walked through the grand atrium, heads turned. Whispers followed in at least 7 different languages, most of which Kieran's translator couldn't fully parse, but he caught the sentiment well enough. "A human? Here? I heard he's from that backwater planet in the Orion Spiral. How did he even qualify?" Kieran kept his eyes forward, his stride confident. He'd faced skepticism his entire life. This was just a more exotic variety. During the orientation, he found himself seated beside a Centaurian with delicate antennae that quivered whenever she glanced his way. "They're all talking about you," she whispered in accented common. Kieran shrugged. "Let them. I'm Alara, third daughter of the Centauri Diplomatic Corps, Kieran Marshall, Earth. No fancy titles." Alara's antennae twitched with amusement. "You're going to make this year interesting, especially for Princess Zara." "Princess who?" Alara's eyes widened. "You don't know?" "Zara Laverian, heir to the unified throne of the 12 galaxies, top of every class. And," she lowered her voice, "notoriously dismissive of anyone she considers intellectually inferior, which is basically everyone." Before Kieran could respond, the room fell silent. A group of students entered, their uniforms adorned with additional insignia that marked their royal status. At their center walked a young woman with skin the color of twilight and eyes like twin nebulae, swirling galaxies of violet and silver. Princess Zara scanned the room with casual disinterest until her gaze landed on Kieran. For a brief moment, surprise flickered across her features, quickly replaced by something unreadable. "This should be an illuminating term," Alara whispered. Kieran met the princess's stare evenly. He hadn't come all this way to be intimidated, even by the most powerful being in 12 galaxies. As the princess passed, she paused by his seat. "Earth mathematics, I presume?" Her voice was melodic but cool. "Among other things," Kieran replied. "Primitive, but occasionally innovative. We shall see if your admission was warranted." Several of her entourage snickered. Kieran simply smiled. "I look forward to the opportunity to demonstrate, Your Highness." Something sparked in those nebula eyes. Surprise, perhaps. Or challenge. This was going to be an interesting year indeed. The Royal Academy's curriculum was even more rigorous than Kieran had anticipated. Classes in quantum astral navigation, diplomatic protocols of the 12 galaxies, and advanced interdimensional physics filled his schedule. But it was advanced energy manipulation, the very subject that had earned him his scholarship, that brought his first true confrontation with Princess Zara. Professor Thalax, a being of pure energy contained within an exosuit, hovered at the front of the amphitheater. "Today, we will demonstrate practical applications of the harmonic resonance theory. Who would like to attempt a demonstration?" Kieran raised his hand simultaneously with Princess Zara across the room. The professor's energy form flickered, a sign of amusement. "How fortunate. Our top student and our unusual new addition. Princess Zara and Mr. Marshall, please approach the demonstration platform." The platform was a circular dais at the center of the room, As they stepped onto it, a holographic array of energy patterns materialized around them. The challenge, Professor Thalax explained, is to manipulate these energy streams to create a stable matrix capable of powering a small city for a day. Princess Zara will use the traditional Laverian technique. Mr. Marshall will demonstrate the Earth approach he proposed in his thesis. Whispers rippled through the classroom. Kieran could feel the skepticism, the barely concealed amusement at the idea that a human could compete with the heir to the 12 galaxies. Begin, Thalax instructed. Princess Zara moved with practiced grace, her fingers tracing elegant patterns in the air. The energy streams responded to her touch, weaving together in complex, beautiful configurations. Her technique was flawless, refined over generations of Laverian energy masters. Kieran took a different approach. Where Zara's movements were fluid and artistic, his were precise and economical. He focused not on the traditional configurations but on the mathematical patterns underlying them. Earth's approach was newer, less elegant perhaps, but potentially more efficient. The energy streams around him pulsed and shifted, coalescing into a matrix that was distinctly different from Zara's, but hummed with equal potency. Professor Thalax circled them, his energy form rippling with interest. Observe, class. Princess Zara demonstrates perfect execution of the classical approach, beautiful, stable, and proven over millennia. The class nodded appreciatively. Zara's lips curved in a satisfied smile. But Mr. Marshall, the professor continued, is demonstrating something quite remarkable, an entirely novel configuration that achieves comparable output, with 17% less energy input. Zara's smile faltered. She glanced over at Kieran's matrix, her nebula eyes narrowing in analysis. Impossible, she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. She was too well trained in the sciences to deny evidence before her. Not impossible, Your Highness, Kieran replied quietly. Just a different perspective. Sometimes looking at old problems from a new angle yields unexpected results. For the first time she looked at him, really looked at him, with something other than dismissal. Explain, she commanded. As class ended, Kieran found himself walking alongside Princess Zara, breaking down the mathematical principles behind his approach. Her entourage followed at a distance, clearly discomfited by their princess's sudden interest in the human. Your theorem contradicts 3,000 years of established practice, she said, but her tone was thoughtful rather than accusatory. Not contradicts. Compliments, Kieran corrected. The Laverian approach is elegant and intuitive. Mine is just, efficient in different ways. They reached a junction in the corridor. Princess Zara paused, considering him with those universe-deep eyes. The Royal Observatory, tonight, 19th hour. We will continue this discussion. It wasn't a request. Kieran inclined his head slightly. As Your Highness wishes. As he watched her glide away, surrounded once again by her courtiers, Alara appeared at his side. Did the princess just invite you somewhere? Her antennae were practically vibrating with shock. To discuss energy matrix theory, Kieran clarified. Alara laughed, a tinkling sound like crystal chimes. Oh, Kieran, you have no idea what you've started, do you? Princess Zara doesn't discuss theory with anyone, not even her royal tutors. Kieran frowned. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, Alara said with a knowing smile, that you've managed to do what 100 royal suitors from across the galaxies have failed to do. You've caught her interest. Kieran watched the princess disappear around a corner, her twilight skin luminescent under the Academy's lights. Caught her interest? Perhaps. But whether that was a good thing remained to be seen. That night, as he made his way to the Royal Observatory, he couldn't help but wonder what awaited him among the stars.